Okay, to my hetero couples age 35 to 55. Yes, you built this For You page brick by brick. This has landed on your page for a reason. I'm about to fix your relationship, okay? Maybe not fix it, but at least tell you what the main issue is that you are having. And if you agree with me, I'd love to hear it. If you disagree with me, I'd love to hear it too. But at this point, I have talked to millions of people and I hear this over and over and over. And it's also what shows up in my marriage. And it's something that we've improved a lot. And also, it still shows up because this runs deep. So, as we grew up in this, like, older millennial, young Gen X, like all the way down to like the younger millennials, as we grew up, we were taught two things. Women were taught that their number one objective in life was to not be too much, and men were taught that their number one objective in life was to not be inadequate. So if you tell a woman she is over emotional, she is over controlling, she is doing too much, versus if you tell a man that he isn't doing enough, he is inadequate, he is unworthy, he is too small.
I I don't know if I was necessarily taught that, or maybe I was taught that through society. I'm not disagreeing with her at all on that. I will say though that what I have observed is in myself and in other men, it's it's when the inadequacy is called out in men. First of all, men don't really work on not being inadequate. That's the thing that I want to say. Men don't actually try to not be inadequate. We try to, instead of us actually working on not being inadequate, we try to make women not say we're inadequate. You know what I mean? Whereas for the other thing she's saying with women, I do think that women are they're really forced to be smaller, right? So what I'm saying is that there it should be it's not a one to one because women are actually made to be smaller. We actually make women shrink, right? We actually like don't allow women to be them full be their full selves. We don't we A lot of men are turned off by a woman's accomplishments. We know the old, or I guess commonly said thing nowadays about how if a woman already has a home, we can't do anything for her, so on and so forth, right? Like we actually try to make women smaller, and women, they acquiesce for the most part. They do. Like women actually are, they shrink themselves. But when you flip that around, are men actually are men actually trying to not be inadequate? You see what I'm saying? Like, because I think if men were actually focusing on not being inadequate, then we wouldn't really have an issue. And I think that these two things are not the same thing. I do. I truly believe these things. I don't think they're the same thing. Because a person working on not being inadequate is actually typically going to be a net positive, right? For that person and society. You trying to shrink a person is not natural. You trying to make a person feel like they're less than or smaller, that is not natural and that's not healthy, right? So my problem is with this comparison is and not with hers. I think what she's saying is true, but I just want to make the distinction that I think that men, we don't actually perform. We don't actually do the things that make us inadequate. We would rather have this facade of a man that's not inadequate, if that makes sense. And we just don't want to ever be called out on our inadequacies, right? And if we do, we get all up in arms. She's right. That has everything to do with our pride and our ego. I mean, we do that with everything. You call us up about anything, whoa, right? So that's what I think. It's more. It's. I think that's a big problem in relationships. But I agree with her, no doubt about it.
Okay, so here's how this shows up in our marriages and in our relationships. So, women, as we grow up and we are taught that we are supposed to try to be less than what we are, smaller, tinier, quieter, all of those things. We also got this, like, very pervasive message on top of that, that we were not supposed to need men. We were taught that we weren't supposed to need men. We were taught sometimes even that men were bad, men were
But they're but women shouldn't need men and men shouldn't need women. We shouldn't need each other. We should it should be a we should be a benefit to one another if we choose to be together. But we shouldn't need one another outside of having children, but you don't need to have kids. So for survival or to live a fulfilled, full, harmonious, whatever, productive life, you don't need men and men don't need women. We shouldn't need each other, right? We shouldn't.
wrong, men were trash, all these things. And well, that's not true. We were taught like
I disagree with men are, as a group, we are trash. I disagree.
you need to be able to bring home the bacon and fry it up in a pan. You need to be able to make sure that nobody else, like you don't need anybody else. And then men, on the flip side, in this age generation, they were taught that their self-esteem is based on their performance. It is on what they do, on how well they can do it, and on how manly and masculine they can be. And if
Again, I'm sorry. I could be wrong. Y'all can let me know. Again, I think that that's not true. I don't see that, right? I'm going to tell you what I'm saying. Why I disagree. Why I disagree. Hold on.
that their self-esteem is based on their performance. It is on what they do, on how well they can do it, and
That's women. Women are taught that more. Men are taught boys will be whatever you can bring is good enough. Whatever you show up with to the potluck is good enough. If all you want to bring is some Hawaiian rolls, that's fine. Don't worry, because the women are going to bring glazed hams, turkeys, yams, beans, greens, potatoes, tomatoes. You know what I'm saying? Like they're gonna bring everything. If whatever you can bring, hey, bring some cups. That's what men are taught. That's what I'm saying. I'm sorry. I'm not saying. I don't want to. I just don't agree. I think she's off a lot. I do. So far, I think she's off a lot, personally.
on how manly and masculine they can be. And if
That I agree with. Men are definitely conditioned to be. Men are definitely like lauded for how masculine we can present, and we know masculinity is nothing but a performance. So that's real, right? Like I said about the inadequacies, it's not about being inadequate. It's about being called out for the inadequacies, because men are coddled. We are not actually pushed to be good. We're not actually pushed to do our best. We're coddled, right? Like it's the opposite of what she's describing. To me, it's the opposite of what she's describing.
do anything that is distinctly female, if they do anything that is distinctly not male, that means that they are inadequate. That means that they are unworthy. That means that they are not measuring up. The issue is this: those two types of people marry and partner very well together in the beginning, because this man who is so afraid that he's not going to be enough will oftentimes partner up with a woman who is like totally cool, not needing anything. And then on the flip side, it feels really, really great for a woman to partner up with a man who's not like telling her what she isn't or is doing wrong. So at the beginning, this works great. Except over time, what happens is that this woman who is having these controlling, pleasing patterns where she's constantly trying to ensure that everything around her is handled, because she shouldn't need any help and she shouldn't need anybody else and she should be in charge and she should be, like taking care of all the things. She is like just being a mastermind, trying to manipulate everything around her and make sure everybody's good. And then we have this man who is like loving and caring and really wants to be able to just like be there for his family. A lot of times, about 3, 4, 5 years into this relationship, things start breaking.
I'm sorry. She must not be talking about the majority of relationships. She must not be talking about the majority of relationships, because I don't agree. I don't agree. I'm sorry. I want to agree so bad because I think I hear what she's trying. It's like I agree with parts of it, but I don't agree. Like, no, I don't. I'm not saying women are controlling. I think women, in my scenario, I think my wife can be controlling, and I do think that it comes off as controlling to me very often, right? But most of the time, I'll admit it's my ego that makes me feel like she's actually being controlling because my wife has been with me long enough to know that I am not the most aware and I'm not the most consistent. And my ADHD, I got the ADHD brain. And I'm a procrastinator and I get like analysis paralysis, all these things, right? She knows that about me. She knows that about me, right? So she has gotten to the point because of my behavior over the years. She feels like she cannot trust me enough to do things on my own oftentimes, right? Like important things. She's like, "Hey, did you do that? Did you call them? I told you to call them." I'm like, "Yeah, I called." You know what I mean? Like she has to double true because so many times she has been like, hey, can you call them? And I think what she's describing in those first 2 or 3 years is the woman letting letting the man operate on his own and he consistently failing her. And now she's gotten to a point where now she's like, what's that? Oh, I got to fix this. Oh, I got to do, because he's not a leader, but really he's not a partner, right? He's not contributing enough to the relationship. And now she may have to overcompensate for that. And you know what I'm saying? But it's better to be like that than it is to be to not do enough and then be missing out on all of these, costing yourself money or because you're not paying bills on time or missing appointments and you know what I'm saying, and things of that nature. So she's like, I got to be on top of everything, right? So it's like I think that is a reaction. What she's describing how the woman is, I think most of the time that is a reaction to the man's behavior, right? Because let's go back to what I was saying about men initially. Men are inadequate. We don't feel inadequate, and we're not necessarily pushed to not be inadequate. We are inadequate. And when you get into a relationship with a person that isn't inadequate and they are capable, yeah, she's right. They match up because women are conditioned to take care of men, and men are conditioned to expect women to take care of us. That's what I think. It's more, I think those are the dynamics that have been conditioned into us.
And the reason they start breaking is because needs aren't actually being met. Most women, all they want to know is that they are enough and that they are not too much. Most men, all they want to know is that they are not too little and that they are enough as well. And what happens is that our traumas start playing against one another. So what this looks like is as this woman gets progressively more tired, maybe now we're working, there's kids involved, there's all these things, and she's trying to take care of everything and delegate out and do the things, and she's delegating to her husband, and then her husband is not doing everything that she's asking exactly the way that she's asking and the way that she's asking it on the time schedule she's asking it, and she gets frustrated because how is she supposed to take care of everything if he's not doing what she's telling her to do?
Exactly. So the cure to this is the man actually take up the mantle on a lot of the tasks, and that way if he's proactive, right? So for an example, instead of him waiting on her to make a doctor's appointment for his kids, he makes the doctor appointments for his kids. And then he consistently takes them to their appointments and gets them there on time and does the follow-up and so on and so forth. And then that will alleviate the stress. That will alleviate the pressure from her. And she will, moving forward, she will not be nitpicking and asking him to do these things and making sure he's doing it and staying on top of him, right? That this thing, I could be missing something. This is what I've learned in my relationship. I've learned the complete opposite of what she's describing to me. And maybe I could be wrong. Maybe my wife is control. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think she is. I'm just saying, like, she could be right. But I don't think that that's what it is. when I've really like delved into it in my relationship, I'm like, oh, I see what happened. I see what happened, right? My wife wasn't always like that. My wife wasn't always like that. But after years of being surprised, with these bad, you know, like, hey, didn't I tell you to pay that bill? And I'm like, yeah. Well, why did we just get a letter saying we're 30 days late? Oh shit, I forgot. I told you to pay it though. And, oh, I did, and but I just didn't do it at the time, right? So that's why she's like, do it on my schedule. Just and also, here's another thing I've learned. Why not just do it when they ask you to do it? Does it hurt you to do it at that time? Are you like, I get if it conflicts with something else, but if you're just not doing it out of spite, which I think a lot of men, because men are a part of the inadequacy that she's talking about, where we don't want to feel inadequate, and she's right. A part of that is being told what to do, right? So a way that we push back against that is by being petty and not doing the things that our partners are asking us to do in real time. So we just, yeah, like on their timeline. So their timeline is bop, 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 bop. And then we go, bop, 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 beat, beat, beat. And then they're like, so, really the only acceptable timeline would be to do it sooner, right? Like if they say, hey, can you call them tomorrow? And you go, yeah. And then you go, well, no, I'll call them right now. That's the only acceptable timeline. But why wouldn't you call them tomorrow? Why wouldn't you just get it out of the way, right? If you're not being egotistical. Because what the fuck are you doing right now? Watching the game? What are you doing right now? Talk on TikTok, on YouTube, right? Like this is what I have come to learn. This is what I'm saying. Like, so I could be wrong about this. I could be, but I feel like for me, this has been the healthiest way for me in my relationship, like in my growth.
So she starts giving him a hard time. She starts nagging. She starts doing things where she is saying things to him. And the subtle implication of that is, you're not enough, you're not enough, you're not enough, you're not enough, you're not enough.
Because what if he isn't enough? That's the reality. What woman is going out of her way to make a man feel like he's not enough? Like on just because that's manipulation, right? That would be straight up manipulation. If you are intentionally trying to make a person feel like they're not enough, knowing that they are enough, then that's manipulation. And that's what men do to women, typically. But I don't think that like many women or most women, right, are out here trying to make their man feel like they need the woman, because most women already feel needed. They already know that they're needed by their man. Whether the man says it or not, I think they know, like, this mother, like, he can't tie his shoes without me. You know what I'm saying? So I don't, like, I'm not understand, like, I don't see that being the case.
Well, we've just touched the core wound. So now that the core wound is poked in men start going, well, of course I'm enough, right? I need to prove that I'm enough. So I'm either going to fight back against this and be like, well, you are telling me to do things that aren't even important or don't even matter or whatever. Or they're going to shrink into a shell and they're going to detach, disconnect, shut themselves off because it feels too painful to stay connected. So we're going to see a fight response or we're going to see a freeze response. And then the woman in response is going to feel even more like she is too much because she's being told that she's demanding too much, she wants too much, she needs too much. Or this person, this partner of hers that she loves is pulling away, is detaching from her. And she gets the very distinct message of like, you were too big, you asked for too much, you did too much, and now you're losing love. So she...
That's true. That's true. I 100% agree with that.
Either gets yelled at or she gets separation. So then the desire to control kicks in even further because now it's, oh gosh, I have to prove that I'm not too much. So let me make sure that I do more and put more on my shoulders and take on more responsibility to try to show everyone that I really do get to get my needs met. It really is okay for me to have things given to me in return because I'm taking care of everything. Don't you see how hard I'm working? Meanwhile, a lot of times the man is detaching further and further. And if this doesn't get corrected, one of two things is going to happen. One of these two partners is going to go, you know what, this is too much. And then there's going to be somebody over here outside of the marriage a lot of the times that kind of brings in this idea of like, hey, you could actually get your needs met. You could be with somebody who cared about you in a way where you felt like you weren't too much or you felt like you weren't like inadequate. And then the end is usually near. Now, sometimes it doesn't get there. Sometimes couples just decide to like live with this. And a lot of times people are deep enough in their trauma that they're like, no, this is fine. I actually like this. Like, it's okay. The guy will say like, oh, it's okay that I don't really get to make choices, or like she's in control all the time. And the woman will say, well, it's okay. Cause like, he does help. Like he's not like these other fathers who like barely do anything. He does do stuff. A lot of times this is where the sexual polarity goes away. This is where the roommate factor comes in. And this is where you're like, yeah, like I like them as a person, but this isn't somebody that I feel super intimate, super vulnerable, super close with. So what's the answer? The answer is that for women, we have to actually do the work to recognize internally that we are not too much. And men, they got to do the work from detaching and deconditioning from this performance-based self-esteem. Women got to learn that it is safe for us to take up space with our emotions and our feelings and feel fully and be our full selves. And a lot of times men have to learn like, hey, you know what? This is not just about what I can do for people. My life is not just based on how well I can follow other people's rules and how well I can make sure that I'm not toxically masculine. It is based on what do I want? How do I want to show up in my life? How do I want to lead? And how do I want to take control of my life?
She's spitting now. She done hit her stride. She 100% correct. All the rest of everything thus far, I love it. Perfect.
And this is where the systemic conditioning really creates a problem, because if at the systemic level we believe that men leading and men taking control is bad, and we keep putting this narrative out that women need to be the ones who are in control in order for everything to work, instead of actually looking at what does it look like to create an equitable partnership between these two humans where they, in their relationship, are allowed to decide what makes the most sense. They are allowed to decide within themselves what makes the most sense. Without doing that, like, this does not get better. This does not stop happening. And now a lot of us have kids, and they are now like getting into those tween, teen, even maybe adult age, and they've watched this happen for a while. So now they are doing one of two things. They are either going, ooh, I do not want to repeat that pattern, or they're going, okay, well, yeah, like that's the pattern I'm going to repeat. So that's how trauma continues. That's how these things move forward. So I say all this to say the way that we fix this, the way that we shift this, the way we change this is getting really honest with ourselves around like, what did I learn about what it meant to be a woman? What did I learn about what it meant to be a man? What did I learn about what it meant to be in a relationship with somebody of the opposite gender? And yes, I know this is a very heteronormative conversation. I'm not including anyone who identifies as a gender outside of women or men just for the sake of this conversation, because that would just get entirely too complicated. And like, we've got to take it down to that micro level. We've got to be able to, within our own relationships, look at what did I learn? What did I watch on TV? What did my parents do? What did your parents do? What was modeled for us? And is that actually how we want to show up in our relationship? Or do I want to allow my spouse to take up the full space that they want to? And can I also take up the full space that I want to as well? Or could I maybe not take up so much space because I don't actually really want to take up that much space? So I say all this to say, if you want help with this, we do this at our institute. Like I said, we've helped thousands of people do this. I've talked to millions of people about this. If this is something that you desire support with, then we're here.
I have nothing to say at the end. I think everything she said at the end was spot on. I disagree some parts in the middle. I heard what she was trying to say overall though. But yeah, I love that. I think she's 100% right. Anybody that's dealing with this, if you could, you know what I mean? Like if you heard what she said, take notes, because I did. Like I think that was awesome. I think that was spot on. I appreciate her for putting this information out there.